Welcome to part 3 of my narrow gauge layout build. In common with most other modelers, I suspect there is never enough room to do everything you want. So in this case, the narrow gauge layout will sit on a shelf on brackets above my main layout and will be above my storage yards. Fortunately, when I built the main layout, I did make the back scenes on this section removable for access to the storage yards. This will also help with access to the future narrow gauge layout. One other problem I found when designing the layout was that I always like to use circuitron point motors because I found them to be very reliable. Unfortunately, they are quite large and have a large profile, especially as the connecting wires protrude from the bottom. But after a bit of research on the internet, I found that it's possible to turn them sideways, resulting in a lower fitting which will then be hidden in the framework of the narrow gauge layout, and also the wires protruding from them will then be neatly tagged underneath the board, so preventing any future problems of fouling other items. So here in detail is what we did with the point motor. It was turned horizontally and glued to a subframe board. The wiring loom was also secured to this on a terminal block, and a small hole was drilled to act as a pivot to the wire going up to the point motor. So now let's return to the layout and see the progress that has been made on building the embankment. With the background complete, it's now time to start work on the embankment itself. I was going to make the lower levels of the embankment stand on a rock face, but having seen some pictures of the Festiniog Railway, I realised that in many cases they used slate instead. So slate walling was used on the lower levels to replicate the use of this material, which I assume would have been quarry waste anyway. Higher up the embankment, I started building a rock face by using a combination of my Woodland Scenics moulds. After pre-wetting the wall by brushing on water, I then gave the rock face its first coat of light grey paint. Further coats of progressively darker grey were added, but before each coat water was brushed on, as this assists the flow of the grey paint and enables it to run into the crevices and cracks in the rock face. As a final touch, after all the layers of grey paint had dried, I added some burnt sienna. This was applied by working upwards from the ground level to highlight places where soil contamination could have occurred and also possible places for vegetation to cling to. And finally, in this section, we add some greenery into the landscape by adding a selection of scatter materials onto a bedding of PVA glue. This is just a base covering. More vegetation will be added later once the layout starts to develop. I also have a static grass applicator which I will use at a later stage to produce more natural looking grass once there is no danger of the grass being damaged during the construction of the layout. So for the time being we will leave the embankment like this and return to it later once we have a clearer idea of where other structures are going to be sited on the layout. The track has been ballasted, the slate wall has been dry brushed with various colours, and any obvious joints in this wall will be disguised later by different means. There will also be more features to add to the rock face, such as creepers and climbing plants, but these will have to wait until the various structures that will go in front of the wall have been sited.